Liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I have two announcements. One is due to the board or many members of the board attending a community meeting on Tuesday, October 24th, we will be meeting on Monday, October 23rd next week at 7 p.m. and we'll be meeting at the Lunenburg Middle High School. The meeting will not be broadcast live, but it will be recorded and broadcast at a later time. In addition, the town of Lunenburg is forming a partnership with its local businesses to enhance economic development. We'd like to hear from residents about what types of businesses and events can make Lunenburg a better place to live. Residents are invited to participate in an interactive dialogue that will focus on what residents want to see moving forward in terms of business in Lunenburg. The meeting will be in the Bellata Meeting Room right here in Town Hall on Monday, November 6th at 7 p.m. The meeting's being held with the assistance of the Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, MRPC, and please RSVP to the Selectmen's office by November 1st if you plan to attend. And that number is 582-4144. Are there any other announcements or public comment from the board?
Yes, the Boys and Girls Club asked me to announce that at that meeting on the 24th from 6 to 8:30 at the high school, the Lunenburg Resources for Opioid Awareness and Recovery Task Force Opioid Forum is going to be held Tuesday from 6 to 8:30 in the Middle High School auditorium. The group will be offering free child care at the event inside the school for families who would like to attend and need supervision for their kids. The effort is a collaboration of quarried adult volunteers from the Boys and Girls Club and the Lunenburg High School National Honor Society students. They'll help with homework, play games, do simple art projects, show a movie, and have snacks and beverages. Please come.
Mr. Chairman? The Lunenburg Snow Riders will have a bridge dedication ceremony on October 28th. We have changed the date to accommodate the Charpentier family. This is a bridge that will be dedicated to the memory of Peter Charpentier, who was a lifelong resident of Lunenburg and a very avid outdoorsman and member of the Lunenburg Snow Riders. The ceremony will be at 11:30 at the Lane property, and we will be having hay rides and a hike out to the bridge, which is a fair hike. But if people are not able to hike out, we will have hay rides out to the bridge. So people should meet at the Lane property parking lot at 11 a.m., and we will transport people out to the bridge. If people are interested in attending, I would ask that they RSVP to myself, and my email is on the webpage, or it's Paula. My regular email is paula.bertram@verizon.net. And again, this is the Lunenburg Snow Riders, or you can go to the Facebook page for Lunenburg Snow Riders and just send a message that you'll plan to attend. After the ceremony, we're planning to have a light lunch, which is the reason for the RSVPs, but everyone is welcome, and we hope that members of the board will attend. And we're looking forward to honoring the memory of Peter.
Any other public comment from the board? I should mention that we are trying out our new iPads tonight, and in an effort to save some trees and have the most up-to-date documentation when we have our meetings. But for the time being, we have some training wheels, so we have all the paper and the iPads. But at some point in the future, hopefully, we'll be able to do away with the paper. Is there any public comment from the public? Please.
Hi, it's Katie Adams from Williams Drive, and I just want to say tonight, I'm not just public commenting for myself, but really for a group of people. I've been advocating for some time to preserve the municipal identity in Town Center, which sometimes I call Save the Center, and also really in general advocating to preserve municipal land for future municipal use. The history to this is really when I was at meetings attending for other reasons, when I heard the topic of surplus buildings or putting some of these properties out for bid. I really initially was completely confused by it, to be honest, because I was new to following town government. So I went back, filled in the blanks, and then I had two questions left. One, was I the only one who was so confused about why we would sell town land? And two, was I the only one who would be upset about it? So that launched a lot of community outreach for me to see, indeed, did other people know that these proposals existed, and how did people feel about them? And so it's been months worth of outreach, and it has formed a large group of people, and we have a citizen petition article which was certified on October 11th, so it'll be on the agenda for town meeting, and it's to see if the town will vote to place a moratorium of no less than 10 years on the sale of the land under building situated thereon known as Ritter, the primary property, the town hall, the TC Passios, and the Brooks House. And there's a bit of symbolism in here. One, the 10 years brings us to 2028, which is our 300th birthday. And it's really about having the conversation about whether or not the town's interested in selling off or disposing of parcels of its land. It's really been a great process, and in its own way, a unifying process to just learn how to do the outreach, and I've met so many people that I didn't know. Some of them will be lifelong friends, so it's been a good process, but really behind it all is, the town wanting to represent the fact that there's a lot of people who aren't interested in selling its historic municipal land, and I look forward to talking more about the article. Thank you.
Please.
Hi, my name is Terry Birchfield, 118 White Street, and Chair of the Finance Committee, and I just wanted to make note that with the special town meeting coming on November 28th, we will be having the public hearing on the warrant articles on November 9th, Thursday night, at our regular meeting time. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Our first appointment is for 7:05, and it's with regard to the Stormwater Task Force Review, MS4 Notice of Intent, and a discussion of the MS4 Stormwater Management Plan. Who's up?
Adam Burney can take it from here.
Hi, all. Adam Burney, Land Use Director. So this is a very quick presentation about the Phase 2 permit only, not necessarily. We'll talk a little bit about the status, but that'll become evident why we're not talking too much about it. So what is the what is the Phase 2 permit? Phase 2 permit is a federal environmental protection agency permit issued under the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System process. It is for the collection of stormwater within an urbanized area owned and maintained by a municipality. So that covers what is an MS4. It conveys, it's all the catch basins, all the pipes, all the outfalls, all the ditches that carry stormwater. What is stormwater? It's rain when it hits the ground, is essentially any sort of precipitation that makes it to the ground and is then flowing. The ultimate goal is to maintain anything that's discharged into waters of the United States, which everything that hits the ground in the United States ultimately discharges to waters of the United States. The permit contains 6 minimum control measures. These are the things that the EPA reviews, that communities that have a small MS4, so Boston, Worcester, New York City, Providence, they all have Phase 1 permits. They're individual to those communities. They're pulled out of this. This is all of the other small towns. And public participation and outreach, public education and outreach, public participation and involvement, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff control, post-construction runoff control, pollution prevention, and good housekeeping. Education, they want people to understand why we're doing these things, what the purpose of them are, and by educating people, the citizenry can assist municipalities in doing things on their lots that are appropriate, not changing their oil over a catch basin. Simple things like that maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago was kind of standard practice. Most people understand that we don't do that anymore, but it's also education for businesses and industrial. Participation is just getting all of the stakeholders, anybody who owns property involved, understanding what's happening, providing information to the community, working together to produce a plan that works and is feasible, and public participation may introduce other ideas and thoughts that the municipality is, I don't want to say unaware of, but maybe hadn't considered as part of what they're doing. Illicit discharge would be if you take your washing machine and run the discharge pipe out to a catch basin. That's illicit discharge. Anything that hits that catch basin, the community is responsible for. So we don't want, again, oil in the catch basins, grease, cleaners, all of those things ultimately can cause issues for water bodies, watersheds, and if it comes from a municipally owned outfall, which is where the MS4 system discharges. So if anybody has a pipe that dumps out into an easement on their property, that's an outfall. That becomes our responsibility, and we have to track down and mitigate anything that may have happened. So we probably have less of that than some communities, because we tend to have a newer stormwater system. We have a smaller stormwater system, but it's something that we're responsible for. Construction site runoff is pretty self-explanatory. It's making sure that sediment and stormwater stays on sites when they're under construction. Hay bale, silt fence, making sure that you don't open the whole site if you're not working on the whole site, covering dirt piles, those kind of things. Post-construction runoff is ensuring that the site is containing its own stormwater, paved areas, making sure they're closing any disturbed areas with vegetation or some other type of containment. Pollution prevention and good housekeeping is what our DPW does day in and day out. It's maintaining the system, it's cleaning the catch basins, it's making sure that we're responding when there's an issue with those systems, making sure that outfalls are ultimately controlled from erosion and those type of things. There's a whole lot more information about all these, but I know we're tight for time, and we could spend hours in the weeds on these. So the permit process. The permit is a 5-year permit. Currently, we're on year 12 of the 2003 permit. So, as with most things the government does, it's not as timely as everyone would like. The permit is issued through the federal government. They write up this document. It's thicker than the binder that's up there on the table. It's full of ins and outs, legal language, vague conditions and orders. But ultimately, there's a series of things that the town has to commit to do. And in order to do that, we submit a notice of intent, which you have a draft of this evening. And that's basically saying the town fundamentally agrees to do these things, and we're signaling that we're going to comply with the permit. I believe that in the last permit, there was 1 or 2 communities who kind of told EPA, no, we're not going to do that, and EPA came out with their big stick and kind of forced them into it. I think Worcester's been fighting with them had been fighting with them for many years in court. So we submit the NOI. Usually that happens 90 days within the effective date of the permit. Then within the first year, we complete a comprehensive stormwater management plan. That is a more substantial document outlining the actual activities, identifying responsible parties, which are also identified in the NOI, but as you ferret out some of the specifics of how you are going to handle some of these things, those parties can change, and that's a reasonable and expected thing from EPA. So that is the more substantial document, and that kind of becomes the master plan for stormwater over the life of the permit. You do work on the yearly activities outlined in the permit, and you'll notice in the NOI there are activities that say year 1, year 2, year 5, years 3 through 5. So you do that work in those associated years, along with your annual work. There's stuff you do every year: catch basin cleaning, street sweeping, all of that kind of stuff, and you submit an annual report. And then the next year you repeat steps 3 and 4. And you just keep doing that. And then, like we're seeing now, once you get out of 5 years and there's no more associated specific tasks, you keep doing the good housekeeping and maintenance, and you can start to get more creative and do things that help your stormwater that might not be outlined in the permit, but you are not required to. You get credit for doing the things they require you to do. It's not like a term paper or anything where you get extra credit for writing a bigger paper or, bringing in a diorama to go with it. It's compliance with what they want. Everything else is sort of up to the community to decide how they want to handle it. This is really the meat of what I think we're probably going to talk about after I shut up, is where we are and what the current status is. The town has completed a draft NOI. We are ready to hand it to EPA when they are ready to accept it. However, both Massachusetts and New Hampshire, their Phase 2 permits are, and then the Phase 2 permit covers the entire state, it's not specific to any community, are under court challenge from both sides. So the development community and some municipalities in Massachusetts have challenged the Phase 2 permit as being vague and having conflicting language on what the standard of requirement is. And I believe it's the Conservation Law Foundation and some of those other groups that fall onto the more environmental side have challenged that and said, well, you know what, we're challenging on a Clean Water Act challenge, and you need to start doing these things because it impacts the federal Clean Water Act. So in response to the original challenge issued by the municipalities, the EPA issued a 1-year stay of the permit. So its effective date moved from 1 July 2017 to 1 July 2018. In theory, the case should only take a year. I think anybody who's been involved in any sort of court case knows that a year is probably pretty quick for a judgment. And never mind, this is within the federal appeals court. So, the federal courts tend to move even slower than some of the state courts. So right now, our effective date would be 1 July 2018. 90 days post that would be the submission date for the NOI, and within the first year of the permit, 1 July to 30 June 2019, would be when the town would develop their comprehensive stormwater management plan. No work, I won't say no work, most of the work can't go forward because without that comprehensive stormwater management plan, we don't really have a roadmap. And without a final permit per the outline of whatever judgment comes from the court case, we can't develop the comprehensive stormwater management plan. If the municipalities and development community are successful, there may be items that are removed or there may be standards that are lowered within the permit, and proceeding with a management plan based on the higher standards could be more expensive and cause some confusion for the town. And if it stays the same, then we're still within our ability to move forward within the required dates. Sorry, I tried to keep it as short as I could.
Yes.
I guess I have a question about the last part of that, when you said that we really can't move forward without the comprehensive permit. Because there's a number of things in the notice of intent and under the requirements of the 2003 permit that are outlined in the notice of intent for public outreach, for example, mapping of the stormwater outfalls, public outreach, and those are components even under the 2003 permit. So
Correct.
I'm assuming that those things that are highlighted as 2017, 2018 will still go forward. I understand some of the more comprehensive, expensive things, like some of the testing, et cetera, that may or may not be required by the new permit, but educating residents, for example, putting together flyers and brochures, I'm assuming you're going to go ahead with that type of work.
That's correct, and that's again required under the 2003 permit. The mapping has been done in an effort to assist in the pavement management program and identifying areas in which there may be either a need or just let's do it now so that we know where everything is. In addition, as part of the Community Compact program, the Stormwater Task Force has taken on a consultant who did the mapping with the DPW to look at the catchment areas within the MS4 and to start ranking and prioritizing which outfalls and catch basins may benefit from additional infrastructure or may carry the most pollutant load and would need attention. So that's moving forward, and that is a requirement of I'll call it the 17 permit. And we can use that again later when we submit the NOI, but
Right.
it will also benefit us now as we can start taking care of some of those issues in conjunction with the pavement management plan or independently as funds become available, or we tend to be doing work in that area. So you're correct. There is that, and that's why I said no work can go forward, but we can't develop a fully comprehensive stormwater program in the way that the 17 permit outlines,
Okay.
without the full permit being issued, due to not wanting to make sure that we comply appropriately.
Okay, but the Stormwater Task Force will
Yeah,
continue to
they've
work
already
on a
spoken-
multifaceted
correct.
program to address and educate about
Correct.
stormwater. Okay.
Yes, we've talked about that.
If I'm getting ahead of ourselves and we're going to cover this in some other way, tell me. But there's a fairly extensive article in the warrant on stormwater. That's like, what relation does that have to what you're talking now?
It doesn't. It does and it doesn't. Those bylaws are requirements of the 2003 permit, which we've complied with. In my professional opinion, they're located in the wrong document, and it's a matter of just placing them in the more appropriate document. There isn't any changes to anything other than where they're located.
So moving from zoning to the general
Correct.
bylaws.
And I think in the future, as part of the comprehensive stormwater management, my recommendation to the task force or the committee or however it ends up as they move forward would be to maybe look at those, and there may be some benefit in altering them. But I don't think that it's a necessity at this point, and I think it would be better served once the full 17 permit is locked in and we're moving forward with that, because any changes would be more, they're not opinion-based, but it would be more fitting the desires of the community within the context of that permit and that management plan.
Any other questions or discussion? No. Is there any action item you need from us this evening?
Smiles? No, I mean, like I said, we can't do anything because EPA is not ready for us. Okay. We're ready to go, and they've told us, hold tight. So it's kind of like being in the service.
Great.
Thank you to
Thank
you
you.
and the Stormwater Task Force.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Adam.
Okay, our 7:20 presentation is on GASB 75 and OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And at least some of the Finance Committee is with us this evening. Do you need to convene, or? Okay, fine. And this is Parker Elmore.
Thank you for having me out to talk OPEB. What could be better on a Tuesday night? But so retiree medical benefits you offer to retirees. That's what OPEB is all about. As you might recall, GASB 45 came out in really effective 2008, 2009, depending on your size. So that dealt with retiree medical and accrual accounting. You're on pay-as-you-go for many, many years. We went to accrual accounting. And now we have something called GASB 75 because 45 wasn't quite high enough, so we keep going up the ladder with more OPEB. So we'll talk a little bit about what's happened over the last couple of years, where you are, and what this all means. So we'll skip over the slide about our firm. You're not going to care that much. We've been around for 20 years, and that's all you need to know. So GASB 75 largely mirrors what you saw on the pension side. GASB 67 and 68 came along about 3 years ago to kind of move your pension obligations from the notes section of your financial statement to the balance sheet, change some disclosures. It's a much more complicated process. We're going to follow the same thing here on OPEB. I'm not sure why, but this is what GASB decided, so this is what we'll do. The key element here is things that are going to move to your balance sheet. I would tell you, I know everyone freaks out about, oh my God, we're going to drop this huge number on our balance sheet. The only thing I always tell folks is the rating agencies know how to find the notes section of your financial statement. It's not like it was hiding over there. They know it was there. So simply moving the location has not made you any more or less creditworthy by virtue of movement of the location of it. So I wouldn't really get too stressed out about that, although I will tell you that the rating agencies are more focused now on pension, OPEB, and other debt than they were probably in the past. I know Moody's has said it went from 10% of their rating to 20. S&P is doing a little bit more on it, so just keep that in mind as you do things. So on page 4 of this thing, we talk about the GASB 45 results, what happened over the last 2-year period. And while I know seeing the liability go from 33 million to 41 million, you would say, oh my God, we had bad experience over the 2-year period. You actually had good experience over the 2-year period. It was basically right in line with a very slight gain. The reason why these numbers changed by as much as they did, and we'll talk about it in a second, is we had to make certain changes in the assumptions, basically what PARAC is asking us to do. One for PARAC and one for GASB. We're trying to reflect the fact that people are actually living longer. So I tell folks, changes in assumptions don't change your liability. People are going to live as long as they're going to live, regardless of what I assume. Nobody says, well, gee, Parker said we got to go at 83. No, it doesn't really work that way. So keep that in mind. And then changing what's called an actuarial cost method. That's something GASB 75 requires. Under GASB 45, we were allowed 6 different ways to do it. Under GASB 75, we have 1. So we elected to use that 1. Pretty easy choice. So that each of those costs about $3 million in assumption changes. But again, they don't change the real cost of the plan. Next bit. So in terms of what happened in a yearly basis kind of a concept, the normal cost is the value of benefits being earned during the year by your active employees. So, it was about $1.1 million, went to $1.2 million, right in line with what you'd expect. Your OPEB expense, which is, again, an accrual-based accounting system, that went up by about $700,000, but again, that changed the fact people are living longer and the cost method, so nothing unexpected there. And your cash out the door cost, what the benefits really cost for the retirees, went from $1.1 million to $1.179 million. So again, no real change. So again, good experience over the 2-year period. So as I talked before about, the 45 results, we had a small increase in the number of retirees, and covered retirees and spouses. You went from 226 to 240, pretty much right about what you'd expect. We updated the assumptions I spoke about. And again, the cost method increased the liabilities by $3 million, the mortality table by about 2.8. So again, it's simply just changing what we expect the future to be. If people don't live that long, which hopefully for their sake they do, but if they don't, your plan liabilities will be less. If they live longer, your plan liabilities will be more. It's pretty simple at the end of the day. The key assumptions that drive all this, listen, we could say, listen, if we assume everybody retires at age 88, or we assume everybody dies at age 63, your liabilities are very small. They're not real, but they're small. So here are basically the key assumptions, if you will. For the GASB 45, and this will change for 75, we use a 4% interest rate. That takes future costs, bring them back to today at a certain interest rate. The lower the interest rate, the higher the liability, and vice versa. Termination rates. What's the probability people are actually going to stay employed here? What's the probability they're going to retire? And at what age? What percentage of them will actually elect to take coverage? Not everybody's going to take it because it costs them some money. So they might say, listen, I don't need this. I can get it from my spouse. I can't afford it. I can get it from another government, whatever. So not everyone's going to take it. And then what are future medical care costs going to go up by? We've assumed 5% a year from now until the end of time. I will tell you, I think that's probably a little on the light side. Over the last 5 or 6 years, that's probably been on the high side. But I would probably guess we're going to be a little bit higher than that in the future, and we'll certainly adjust that going forward as we need to. You guys, prior to this valuation, have not set any money aside. Now you have started doing so. As you can see here on this chart, we just kind of show you across the state what we see, what people are doing. Basically 32% have not done any funding at all. 50% are less than 1/4%, so I would say they're not funding at all either. 68% have less than 1%. You could argue they're not funding, so there's plenty of company and very little funding. This is not a Massachusetts thing, this is a nationwide thing. We have clients in 37 states, and I can tell you that outside of, probably 5-6% of our clients, those are the only ones really materially funding, because again, none of you guys have any money. It's simple math to say, you guys should fund. Okay, and where are we going to come up with all this money? So you're not alone in that regard. We give you some key stats about some of your peers to kind of see how you stack up. Your normal cost per person is about $400 and change. You're slightly above the statewide average, not by much. Your unfunded liability as a percentage of payroll is about $250 versus about $180 for a statewide average, so you're a little higher in that regard. And your benefit payments per retiree are pretty much right on the average. So you're pretty much about as close as you can be to being an average Massachusetts town when it comes down to these types of benefits. Whether that's good or bad is in the eye of the beholder, and I'll leave that to you guys to decide. But again, you're not, off the charts in either direction. You're not an outlier is probably a better way to phrase it. Just some plan costs. We just kind of show you, what the various premiums cost, because those are what drive all the costs, obviously. As I tell folks, assumptions are nice and all, but the real cost of the plan is the benefits you pay. That's what really drives things. The two key elements I would say for you guys that drive your costs more so than some other folks, you have 15 covered people over the age of 65 that are not in a Medicare integrated plan. For whatever reason, they're not in those plans. Maybe they don't have access to Medicare, or they're a retired teacher who was around before they were in Medicare. The reasoning for that, I don't know, but there's 15 of those types of people. And you folks actually reimburse a share of the Medicare Part B for your retirees, of which most towns do not do that. So that's another place where your guys' costs are a little higher than average, but overall, you guys are still right in line with the average. So, it's like everything. It's a balancing act. You have certain places where you're high, certain places where you're low, but overall you end up about average. The normal cost per employee, we just kind of show you this to boil it down. It's nice to talk millions and tens of millions of dollars, and it makes it very unreal and meaningless almost. So try and boil it down to an individual employee. And as I tell folks, these retiree medical benefits are really deferred compensation if you think about it. I work for you, I make $42,000 a year, I'm working for DPW, or I'm a teacher, or whatever I happen to be. And you're paying me a certain amount of money, but you're also paying me a deferred benefit in terms of I will get these benefits when I retire. So what is the cost of those? Well, overall for the town, they're about $4,400 per employee per year. For the town, it's about right on that number. School, a little less. Public safety, not surprisingly, is more, because they have a shorter career generally, and they retire earlier. And if you think about it, they retire earlier, therefore they get the benefits for a longer period of time, therefore the benefits are worth more, and they accrue it over a shorter period. So not surprisingly, their normal cost would be higher. And obviously you have questions along the way, you can interrupt me anytime, I will take no offense. So GASB 75, because who doesn't love more GASB? So basically the gist of it is we're gonna move everything to the balance sheet. There are about 20 pages more of disclosures, of which nobody's ever going to understand them, but nonetheless we have them, much like you saw on your pension side, a much longer financial statement. That is what it is. Your liabilities go about $41 million to $48 million. Now you would say, for going up from a 45 to a 75, it's that big of a change? That has nothing to do with it. It's really the interest rate. We go from 4% to 3.25%, to which then you would say, well, why don't we just stay at 4? We're happy at 4. Unfortunately, the discount rate is calculated based on how you fund. So the fact that you guys are not funding much means we have to use the 20-year municipal bond index rate, which as of the beginning of this year was about 3.13%. So that's what we have to base it on, so we're using 3.25. The auditors let us round up. The one key element you're gonna find under GASB 75 is while we used 4% for the last 10 years, now it's gonna go up and down every year based on what the municipal bond index rate does. So, bless you.
Thank you.
So right after the election, the municipal bond index rate went up about 3.7. Then it came back to about 3, and now it's back at about 3.10, 3.15. So your numbers are gonna bounce a lot more than they have in the past, because that interest rate is gonna bounce up and down. So that's just something you have to keep in mind. And don't get me wrong, the financial community knows that as well. They realize that the real cost of the plan is benefits out the door, and the rating agencies don't get too hung up on 3.25, 3.75, 4 or 5, whatever. They see the assumptions, they know how to do it, and what they end up doing, honestly, is they take the numbers that we present, or your auditors present, or whoever, and they're gonna adjust them onto their model, basically. And they're gonna say, we think everybody should run the numbers at 4.25, or 5.75, or 7, or whatever number they choose. They're gonna put everybody on a level playing field, and that's the whole point of all these disclosures, to make them easier to adjust everybody and make them even. So that's really what this is all about. So if you're trying to rate Lunenburg versus Leominster versus Spencer versus whomever, we can take all those communities and make them equal for these purposes. For the very different calculation of the expense now, so we kind of show an NA for the prior year because they're not really a comparable number. They get calculated very differently now. Basically the gist of it is your expense number now is basically about what it was before, but it's calculated in a very different way. So I don't really want to show them side by side because they don't mean the same thing. But again, your employer share of costs, the real cash out the door, goes $1,179,000 to $1,244,000. Again, nothing unusual, about you'd expect. And the $100,000 going into the OPEB trust, which certainly is a start. It's hard to find the money, and people always ask me all the time, should we fund, is it worth it, da 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 da, and I go, guys, I have no idea. And I don't say that to avoid the question, but rather I don't know what the other needs are of the community. I could say put a $300,000 in OPEB trust and you go, well, we need to do a fire truck. Well, that's probably a better use of your money. Or we can spend money to bring some employer to town, or we have a new stormwater system we have to do, or whatever. There are many different needs of capital in the town, of which this is one. So I'm not saying to ignore it, but rather I'm saying it's a balancing act. And that's what you folks in your job have to do, is balance all the many, many needs of the town and figure out what the priorities are. So certainly there's benefits to it, but don't let the OPEB plan run your town, basically is the short answer, what I try and tell folks. I just give folks some projected cash flows and try and put them into today's dollars, because the numbers get terrifying in the out years, and even in today's dollars they get large. But 40 years from now, this $1.7 million or so of current dollars and costs go up to $13 million over 40 years, and you go, oh my God, this is terrifying. What can I do? And I've had towns, guys, not even point trying it, the numbers get too big. So we started putting numbers into today's dollars, basically in present value, to show people, a dollar 40 years from now is not worth the same as a dollar today. And we try and explain that to folks. So, your $1.2 million becomes 2.6 in 40 years. So it's not great. It's going doubling over a 40-year period, but it's not like it happens tomorrow. You have plenty of time to make adjustments. So it's really, my point is to show you folks, kind of like I tell folks about Social Security, everybody knows how to fix it, but government's never going to fix it until we have a crisis, because there's no benefit to doing the small things that are required to fix it. There's no votes in that. So I try and explain to people, you can make small changes today, or you can wait until disaster happens in 2043 and oh my God, we can't pay the bills, and we'll start slashing things left and right. My point is, if we can identify things now and you make small repetitive changes, you can adjust to these things and not have them take over your budget. So at least that's the goal behind presenting numbers that way. The excise tax, the Cadillac tax, call it what you will. It was supposed to be effective for 2018, got pushed to 2020. If I had to forecast, I will tell you it would get pushed again, but time will tell. The idea here is you'll pay 40 cents on the dollar for every dollar for which your premiums exceed a certain threshold amount. For single coverage, about $11,000 and change. For family coverage, about $31,000. So I think about $2,600 a month for family coverage. In this area, that's not really off the charts. I have some towns that have really aggressively gone after it. Other towns go, that's never going to take effect anyway. What's going to happen? Anybody can predict. If I had to guess, I will say they will kick the can down the road another 2 or 3 years, and they will keep doing that. And I say that for the very simple reason, repeal is very expensive. This tax is supposed to raise a lot of money. And the way 10-year budget windows work in Congress, to repeal this is about a $200 billion tax cut to repeal it. That's difficult to do. So if they kick the can down the road for 2 years at a time in some omnibus appropriation at year end, it's a $20, $30 billion deal. They lump it in with some NASCAR tax and some Puerto Rican rum tax and every other extender known to man. And we kick it down for a couple more years. And so if I had to guess, I will tell you that's what's going to happen. But again, we will see. As of now, it's effective in 2020. So we do have to reflect it in your valuation, because that is the law. It doesn't cause a huge impact on your valuation, but it is there. Because it is currently the law. But again, we'll see what really happens. And that's, pretty much, I guess you would say, what I've got for prepared stuff, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know there's piles and piles of paper we've presented to you, so you're welcome to answer whatever you got.
Any of your comments or questions from the board?
Scary.
It's kind of awkward. But basically, you mentioned that the rating companies are looking
Absolutely.
at something.
Yep.
So basically, your recommendation at this point is just to continue to do something.
Well, I think it's managing the liability. So the key element here is you don't want to ignore it and stick your head in the sand like many towns have done and cover their eyes and close their ears, nothing to see here. Rather, they want to see, what are you doing? So that can be addressing the liability side of the equation, be it through plan design, be it through changes in premium structure, be it through setting money aside on the funding side. So there's not one, it's not one size fits all, I guess is my point. Every town will approach it slightly differently. I think the key element is to address the issue and not ignore it.
Okay, and then given over the last several years, there have been so many plan design changes that we're probably at the point where we don't have a lot of wiggle room there anyway.
No, you don't. The thing here in Massachusetts versus, say, some of the other states we work, Massachusetts largely precludes a lot of the things we could normally do. By virtue of the fact, what I mean by that is we can't change the eligibility. That's state enabled.
Okay.
See, in California, I take a plan from age 55 to age 62. I can vary contributions in other states by age, by service, by a combination of age and service. Here, everybody pays the same percentage. So there's certain things we can't do that we can do in other places. With that said, you do have some flexibility on the plan design side, but you guys have already made the biggest change, which is moving to what's called the MedX2 product, which is really the biggest bang for the buck that's out there. That's the low-hanging fruit we encourage everybody to take. You guys have done it, so have most other folks. So that's really the most effective thing you can do. The state talks every so often about having a committee and doing various things. They're good at committees, not so much on legislation. So we'll see if and when that ever happens. There's not a ton you can do on the plan design side. You have some work you could do on the premium side if you want to. But that's really about it. There's not a lot you can do there. So yeah, there's not a ton you can do.
Okay, and then basically, given the special reserve fund,
Yeah.
the one thing that came up with that would be if at any particular year we wanted to then tap that for health-related costs, we could do that. So,
For related to retiree medical, absolutely.
right, okay.
Yep.
And, I guess those are the only questions that I have.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else over there had any.
Well, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Hey, thank you, appreciate it.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is our 7:35 appointment, and it has to do with the Hickory Hills Landowners Association Dam Committee, and it's a request for easement. Our presenters are Melvin Bertram and John Fortune, and we have a little housekeeping to do first.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am a member of the Hickory Hills Dam Committee, also a resident of Hickory Hills, and I will be recusing myself from this discussion. I have filed a disclosure with the town clerk. However, I will be potentially participating in the discussion and future discussions as a member of the Dam Committee and as a citizen of Lunenburg and Hickory Hills, but not as a member of this board.
And I should also mention that I am also a resident of Hickory Hills and a landowner, so I have filed the disclosure under Section 23B3, which is a disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest, but I do plan to participate as a board member. And I should probably mention that Mr. McQuaid, who is not with us tonight, is also a resident, and I assume that he has filed a similar form, but we'll make sure that he does before he participates. So with all that said, take her away.
All right, hi. I'm John Fortune of Hickory Hills. I'm here to represent the Dam Committee this evening. It's an 8-member committee. As you just found out, Paula and Tom are both on that committee, as well as myself and 5 others. So we're here tonight based to inform you of some project that we're working on Hickory Hills. We're undertaking that over the next year, and will affect the town. I want to share with everybody how that'll be done. So the agenda briefly is what are the state requirements and what are the changes that we're making, what's the town involvement, and what's the timeline of the project. So a little background, Hickory Hills Lake Dam. The lake is about 315 acres, water volume about 3,915 acre feet. For any of you that want to do the calculation, that's about 1.3 billion gallons of water when the lake is full to the top of the dam. The earthen portion of the dam is about 1,900 feet long. The concrete portion of the dam is about 147 feet long, and the majority of the dam is adjacent to Townsend Harbor Road, and which would be the reason for the easement and our discussion this evening. So let me first talk about the state requirements. The state, due to recent changes in the state requirements, the state is now requiring us to meet or exceed a 1/2 probable maximum flood, or PMF, which equates to, in our watershed, which is a little over 7 square miles, is 15.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. The dam currently meets a 500-year flood requirement, which is 11.7 inches in that same 24-hour period. So with a 1/2 probable maximum flood, water will flow over the top of the earthen portion of the dam. It'll be about 3 to 4 inches high over the dam. And if that's going to happen, or that does happen, the state is required us to do a overtopping so that the dam does not erode. And that's what the project is. So what is overtopping? Briefly, we're using a company called GeoWeb for the product. So just to look at the slide here, the top right portion is a GeoWeb. It's a diamond-shaped wedding that'll go over the whole earthen portion of the dam. It'll go down onto the lakeside about 18 inches. It will flow all the way down to either the road or where the embankment levels off to be a flat grade, so that in that portion it cannot erode. The bottom left would show you how the work is actually done. They would take off a portion of the dam, 5-6 inches of the dam. They'll take the earth off of it in sections. It won't be the whole thing at once. They'll do it in sections. They'll lay the GeoWeb down and then backfill it with loam. So the idea is it'll just be a grass slope when we're all done, as you see in the other two pictures on this slide. Okay. So I mentioned town involvement. As we look through the plans on this, in this plan here, this is just one portion of the dam, and I have two more that show the next two portions. But the important piece is the red dash line. That happens to be the property line or the easement line for the road. So Townsend Harbor Road is here. The dash line indicates the end of the pavement. The banking starts there and it goes up to the top. The gray line shows that the top of the banking heading back down towards the water side. So if you look at these three slides, this one, the second one here that includes the concrete portion of the dam, which is here, and then the third one, all of them have a portion of the dam being in the town right-of-way. Okay? So what is then required from the town if a portion of the dam is within the Townsend Harbor Road right-of-way? So we are asking the town to agree to a legal easement to allow Hickory Hills to perform and maintain the overtopping within that right-of-way. We're also asking for approval to work with town council to draft an easement agreement using the town council's legal, standard legal documentation. And I think it's important that I mention right now that no town funds will be required for this. The project is being funded entirely by the Hickory Hills residents. So we're not asking for any money. Unlike the previous presentation, there were no dollar signs in this presentation. So what is our timeline? This fall, or as we are now, we're completing the engineering design. I talked with the Ty and Bond, our dam engineering contractor, today, and we've been going ongoing. We're waiting for tonight and a few other things to be done, but we're very close to that engineering design being complete. We begin the process of approvals by notifying Conservation Commission. The state is aware of some of the work that we're doing, but we'll have to legally notify them, and of course, meeting with you folks here. And then site visits. Actually, Conservation Commission was out there over the weekend taking a look at what we're doing. Over the winter and into the spring of next year, we'll file a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. We have to file Chapter 253 to the state and work with you folks for any agreements that we need to put in place per the Board of Selectmen. In May of 2018, we believe if we are approved to go forward, we'll need approval from the town as well. But it's up to someone here to tell me if it's different than that. We will issue requests for quotes to qualified construction contractors, and summer final selection will be done, and then in the fall of next year, we'll actually complete the project. So in summary, the state is requiring us to make changes to our dam to meet the new rainfall requirements, to meet that 1/2 PMF, as I mentioned earlier. Part of the dam is within the Townsend Harbor right-of-way. So we will need town approval to go ahead and complete the project and meet the requirements of the state. The plan is to complete the project by fall of 2018. Okay, are there questions?
What's the membrane made of?
It's a rubber type membrane. It's about 4 inches thick, and the diamonds they're multiple sizes, but they're kind of an 8-inch diamond type process. And they come in, they're 30 feet wide, 300 feet long strips of material.
So you do a 30 by 300 piece at a time, sort of?
Well, you do bigger than that but you wouldn't do, 1,900 feet at once. You would strip a portion of the dam, put the membrane down, backfill it, seed it, go to the next portion.
How long does that kind of membrane last?
Forever. It doesn't break down. It's because of the rubber or plastic material it's made of. It's intended not to break down. It's attached. We've gone through. I see Jack is here. Jack and I have spent some time getting to know each other on how we were going to attach this to the road, because it needs to be attached when the embankment comes to the road. So there's a process that we'll use to cement it into the asphalt and then run some asphalt up over the cement, so it's all connected together. So it's a pretty detailed project to get it all connected, to the road and to the embankment that's there. There's pegs that go into it I think it's every 2 feet. There are pegs that go into the embankment to hold it in place.
Stabilize
And then
it.
once the material is backfilled into it, it won't move.
Certainly, what's going on, as we've seen in Houston and Florida with dams breaking, most of them are earthen dams.
Yep.
And I certainly remember Hickory Hills that originally it was just the small dam, and then at one point in the 70s, they added the spillway to the right side, which was an important safety thing, and then they took off a lot of the vegetation so the trees weren't causing damage to the earthen berm. So I appreciate the Hickory Hills Association doing the work that needs to be done, not to mention you're liable for it, but it's the right thing to do. And I certainly support this project as a protection of people living downstream and the protection of Townsend Harbor Road, Cross Street, being another one that we wouldn't want to wash out if there was a dam to go. So I certainly support the working forward on this, and we have town council to work on the legal requirements and easements that need to be written. So I would be fine with this going forward.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I would agree. I don't believe you need a decision from us tonight, but I think you have our support to move forward.
Absolutely.
Please.
Okay.
I just would like,
Who are you?
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road, member of the Dam Committee. We're just looking for approval to work with town council from this board. That we are seeking tonight. I have spoken with Attorney Costa, and he believes it makes sense for him to draft the agreement, because that way he'll make sure he has what he wants in the agreement. We certainly, as the association, will have our council look at it, but I want to make sure that that's okay, because he wanted approval from this board before he would work with us. So if you could act on that tonight, that would be appreciative.
I would make a motion that we authorize town council through the direction of the town manager to review this and propose the proposed easement.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
would also ask for sort of channeling Paula for other things, that the town owns the dam on Lake Shirley, and that is there any report due from the dam keeper for that, and whether with the new requirements, whether we're going to be doing this for that dam as well, for a future action item.
Good point.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I ask one quick question in regards
Sure. Come up to the mic, please.
David Passios, 56 Whiting Street. There seemed to be some question as to whether this needed to go to town meeting or not. It's my understanding that any easement agreement of this type does have to go to town meeting and be approved by the voters. I just wanted to get a yay or nay if we could get that tonight.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's one of the reasons we'd want town council involved, is to tell us what are the requirements and to make sure that we meet all of them, and require that the Hickory Hills landowners and their dam committee meet their obligations as well.
would it work to do it with the annual town meeting? Time-wise?
Yeah, their plan is to do it in May.
That would be the goal, yeah.
Timetable.
Okay.
They have everything in place to be able to go to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Mrs. Bertram. Our 7:45.
Mr. Chairman? One thing, just to answer Mr. Ebersol's questions relative to Lake Shirley Dam, they meet the 1/2 PMA.
So they currently meet the current
They
standards?
meet the 1/2 PMA.
Okay, thank you.
Take that action item off.
Thank you. Other things here.
Okay, our 7:45 appointment is a continuation of our discussion on the next AMP pilot, and we have Mr. Clark here as well as our town assessor. Come on up.
Good evening, Chris Clark with Settler Solar on behalf of Nexamp.
Okay. So we have two documents here. We have the actual pilot agreement, and then we do have a document that was prepared by the assessor's office. So I think Harold may want to check on this as well.
Solar valuation.
Where are we? You find it yet?
Yeah.
Okay, that one. Got it. Alrighty. So, who's going to walk us through this?
I can give a brief description. The documents you have before you were discussed at the last meeting, and this cements them within the pilot as far as what the payments would be for the agreement for a 20-year agreement with a nameplate of 5.9 megawatts,
Approximately.
approximately.
So we have a spreadsheet that talks about the calculations, and then we have an exhibit C on the back of the actual agreement that lays out annual payments proposed as part of the agreement from 2018 to 2037. And what do we look at?
The initial annual payment is projected to be about $41,000, and in 2037 goes up to $66,000.
Correct.
And just to be clear, this is on the personal property only. This does not affect the real estate taxes associated with the parcel.
Correct.
Just so that people at home understand that that's what we're talking about.
And this actual document, the pilot agreement, was negotiated on our behalf by town council and yourself, right?
And the regional assessor.
And the regional assessor. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't have a problem with the proposed pilot agreement. I don't know if any other board member wants to comment, but I didn't see anything in it that concerned me, and I think that this will make sense for both the town and the developer to have a set rate and a set tax. So I would be in favor of moving forward with the pilot. Just to remind everyone that there are approvals. This project has not yet received the necessary approvals to go forward. But in the event that it did, I would not object to this pilot agreement.
I would agree.
That would be my position, too. Do we need a vote?
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve the Nexamp pilot as presented.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Just to make clear, the pilot is payment in lieu of taxes
For the personal property portion
only.
only.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
in light of Ms. Bertram's comments, we are appearing before Conservation and Planning, seeking our final approvals there. The exhibit to the document may change based on what's ultimately approved before the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. In addition, our attorney has yet to review the form of agreement before you, so I would request the opportunity to do that before moving forward with executing the document.
Yeah, I would amend my motion to approve this, subject to calculations being changed based on the final project.
And I would agree with that second. I will say that if there are substantial changes to the document upon your council's review, I would assume that it would come back to this
Yes.
board.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Can I just comment as one, Chairman?
Excuse me?
Can I make one comment?
Sure, please do.
There is language within the agreement that it's based on the nameplate, which is the size of the facility. So if that does decrease, it would be no larger than that, but if it does decrease, that's why the pilot payments would adjust
Right.
accordingly.
So we actually don't need my adjustment of the motion then, because what we
Right,
approved
it will
here-
automatically.
It will automatically adjust.
It won't adjust more than that.
Correct.
Right.
Using
But it may
the-
go down
using the
depending
same
on the size of the
formula.
project, right.
It would be the size of the facility, whatever that's ultimately decided upon, times the 7,000 per megawatt.
So the same calculation will be used.
Correct.
And if Next Stamp's legal counsel wants to change anything, then they can come back and ask us to. But
Exactly.
this is the only agreement we've approved.
Exactly. And I think we do, I don't know if you want to take it, but we did have a question in the audience.
Please.
David Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Just a question or clarification from Ms. Bertram's comment about the real estate taxes. This in no way insulates that property from real estate tax increases over that time period?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
All set here?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we vote?
Yeah, we didn't
We
need.
didn't amend it.
Okay, we didn't amend it, okay. Okay.
That was taken out.
Okay.
We amended the amendment. We deleted the amendment. Okay, we have an 8 o'clock appointment for a common victual license for Global Montello Group DBA Honey Farm Store number 3829 at 134 Leominster Shirley Road. Is there somebody here with a good, please?
Wayne Matthews with Global Montello, Territory Manager. And I'm here for the common victulars.
Victular.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Okay. And
The reason you're before us is there a change of management?
Ownership?
Honey Farm, storm number 3829 is located Leominster Shirley Road. This is the gas station, right? The gas station at Leominster Shirley Road?
Kind of across
Okay.
from Powell's.
Okay.
So no changes to operations, just changes to the ownership.
Correct.
Now, you do have a beer and wine there,
Yes.
correct? So is there a change in the alcoholic beverages license as well?
There will be. They are coming before the board in November.
Okay,
for
okay.
that.
okay, so this is just for the common vic.
Yes, that required more advertising for that,
Okay.
the package store.
And when is this effective?
The common victular,
Yeah.
and as soon as the board approves it and the permit's issued,
And then the liquor license stays in the other name until,
until it's transferred through ABCC.
okay.
I would make a motion that we approve the common victualler license for Global Montello Group Corporation for 134 Leominster Shirley Road, as submitted.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
So, on old business, we said we were gonna keep our goals on the front burner. Okay, you okay? Okay, good.
Don't have them memorized?
I do have them in here. I do have them memorized.
I remember two.
Okay, here we go. There are three major ones. Improve public satisfaction through community involvement and public outreach. And there's a number of activities, including a new website and improved web communications, hopefully some of this stuff, and certainly the use of forums for input from citizens on several topics, not the least of which are economic development and building usage and the various things that we're doing there. The second was develop an infrastructure plan for roads, buildings, and equipment. And the third was to identify a desire for and a type of economic development for the town of Lunenburg. And there are several workshops and sessions around that have begun. So we have quite a few things going on. I think we'll have our economic development workshop and a workshop relative to the building part of the infrastructure within the next month or so, and we'll have an opportunity to kind of be a little more specific about the action items behind some of those goals.
I just want to, I know we don't have set dates, but in light of the article that was presented or talked about under public comment, I think we need to put the building reuse discussion on our agenda sooner rather than later, since it will become a discussion at the special town meeting, apparently. And I think it might be beneficial to talk with the potentially, and we can certainly talk about this, but to hear from the presenters of the article as to what the funding mechanism it would be behind their proposed retention for 10 years. And understand what that would mean to the town as far as being able to utilize that space or to reutilize or repurpose that space so that we have these discussions well in advance of town meeting. So I would suggest that we put this on our agenda, and I think it's potentially two topics. I think it may be us talking, and it may be a workshop on the types of things that the community wants to do, and I'm glad we're having that meeting with businesses on November 1st, because I think that will help facilitate the discussion. But I think we need to get this on our agenda ASAP so that we are prepared for town meeting.
Well, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the things we wanted to talk about was our November scheduling. And we currently are planning a November 21st, we were planning a November 21st workshop for economic development. And the reason we went to the 21st was because we wanted to include the sewer commission as part of it. But we find that the land use director is not available on the 21st, and I think he would be a key player in that. So one of our suggestions was going to be to, although that's important, to move that one off a month and use that November 21st slot, or an alternative slot in November to do the building portion of our building reuse and our goal relative to infrastructure, and certainly that could be part of what Mrs. Bertram just mentioned in terms of including the proposed warrant article, including our scheduling for charrettes. I know that we got some input from Mr. McQuaid because he thought we may be covering that tonight, and we're not. We put it off till next meeting to talk about how we might get input on charrette-style information on building reuse and what citizens are looking for in terms of the town center and the building. So I think there's a lot of different reasons for it, but I think they all come together in a November meeting.
So you're going to talk about the charrettes and things at the meeting on the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay.
October 23rd.
October 23rd,
Right.
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
And I think the objective would be to schedule a workshop in November that actually does our portion of that but it may or may not do any of the charrette portion. I think that
Yeah.
that may be a different,
takes a longer
different.
I'll be away on the 21st, so if we have a discussion.
It doesn't have to be the 21st anymore, because if it's not economic development, it doesn't have to include the sewer committee.
Yeah, my concern with the 21st, and I'm fine with doing a workshop on it then, but my concern is to start the dialogue sooner than that, because if the town meeting is on November 28th, that's only 7 days before the meeting.
Right.
So I think we need to potentially meet, talk about it ourselves, and have a workshop sooner that talks about ideas and
Well,
potential.
because we don't need the sewer, well, not that we don't need them, but because they're not as vital as they would be for economic development,
Yeah.
my suggestion might be that we use the workshop session on November 14th, which is our second Tuesday.
I would agree with that.
And we should use an agenda item either on the 7th, I guess, is the meeting beforehand, just to see if we need to do any prep work to get ready for that.
I think that makes sense.
The other thing, the reality is that we're not going to resolve all of our concerns or questions regarding town buildings before town meeting. There's
No.
just not enough time,
Right.
even though there's an article. So
Right.
I would look forward to the presentation at town meeting to see what the communities are, but I'm not assuming that we're going to be in a position to be able to vote before.
No, I'm not either, but my concern is to have these kind of discussions is exactly what this article means and how limiting it will be for town buildings, so that we know, and there needs to be funding. I mean, buildings don't run themselves, so I think we need to have these discussions.
Move that off.
That starts the public hearing process.
I am looking at a proposed November 14th agenda that we were planning without making this change, and there's some work that would have to be done because there's some public hearings and things in there. So let me work that, and we can finalize it in time for next week's meeting.
What's the last time for the public hearing?
Public hearing.
On the 14th? Is there, is it,
7:45, it was with the APDC.
okay,
And that's going to take a certain amount of discussion.
yeah.
I would say we leave it to the town manager.
And the
Yeah.
chairman.
We'll work it out, but
Okay.
we will talk about it at our next meeting,
Okay.
and we understand the request, and we, to have a lot of this discussion prior to town meeting,
Yeah.
special
Okay.
town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's about our goals, and I guess it's a good idea that we keep them in front of us, because they keep driving our agenda. Good thing.
And it probably wouldn't hurt just to have the thumbnail 3 goals on the actual agenda, just
That's a good idea.
to prompt us. That way, by next year, we'll have it memorized.
I feel the need to put some meat on those bones. They're pretty high-level goals, and I think we're going to come down to some action items that look a little more concrete. Moving on to current business, number 1 is to reopen and close the special town meeting warrant.
So due to a procedural requirement to post the opening and closing of the warrant for the special town meeting in a newspaper of local circulation, I'm requesting the board reopen the special town meeting warrant tonight, and it would close on Wednesday, October 25th at 5 p.m.
So moved?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Next item is a right of first refusal for property at 2030 Mass Ave. You wanna?
So we received a letter, and there should be the attorney for the landowner here as well. I just want to recognize him.
Okay.
He's present. And so we received a letter requesting the real property at 2030 Mass Ave be taken out of Chapter 61B. After some back and forth with letters on the requirements with it that are supposed to be included in the letter, we received, and it was reviewed by town council, and it meets the guidelines under the request to take property out of 61B. We then contacted the appropriate boards, planning board, conservation, and open space, and to see if there's any interest in exercising the first right of refusal. We received letters back from Planning Board. They are interested in the town exercising this right. Conservation replied that they would not like to pursue any action on purchasing the parcel. And there was minutes from the Open Space Committee meeting that it's identified it as a parcel that's valuable.
If I'm not mistaken, this is one where there is no purchase and sale, so it's one of those ones that would require the assessment process if...
Correct.
Yes, okay.
So the action the board would need to take tonight would be to vote whether or not you'd like to pursue exercising that first right of refusal. If you do choose so, we would need to have a public hearing and notify the owner of the property by certified mail. And at that hearing, make that vote. And from that point on, we would, if that right of first refusal was exercised, we would have to get an appraisal on the town's dime for that cost.
And how much would that be?
Depends, I would say between around 3,000.
Point of reference, this is 23 acres of land on Route 2A, Massachusetts Avenue. As you're driving from Lunenburg to Shirley on the right-hand side, just before the town line, past the Fairline mobile home park. I think since there's interest from planning and open space, I think we should do our due diligence. It's a large parcel of land that's not, I don't believe it's ever been built on, and would be worthwhile to find out what it is worth. Do we happen to know what the assessed value is?
224.
I would agree with that. You know, there are some trails on the property, but in addition, you know, it's not far from the Cowdrey Nature Center, which has extremely limited parking, and the potential for some type of trail connection and parking area there is there. That's one of the downfalls of the Cowdrey lot. It's a beautiful piece of property, but you can't fit many cars anywhere. Speaking as a Girl Scout leader who tried to do a Girl Scout event there. So I think it does merit looking into.
And then I'm assuming that we would want to add, if it's something that we chose to exercise the right as a result of the review of the appraisal, that it'd be something we'd want to add to the special town meeting warrant.
Correct. It's another reason it's on tonight's agenda.
Okay. I would make a motion that we exercise our right under Chapter 61A for 2030 Massachusetts Avenue, 61B.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just
Sure.
amend that to say you'd like to pursue the option to exercise
Excuse
that
me.
right?
Thank you.
So-
I did mean that.
You meant the second?
I am in the second.
Any discussion? I guess my only one is, if we pursue that, can we get far enough along to address it before the 25th, which is when we close the warrant?
To add an article?
Right.
Yes.
You can do the article, you don't have to finish all the work before.
Yeah,
You just
no,
have
that's
to
what
And
I
we
need.
can make a
by
motion to
town
pass over if we decide not to
Okay.
pursue it.
Alrighty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Just a note on that, the hearing, after the hearing, that exercise, or right is exercised, we have 30 days to do the appraisal.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll be in contact with someone to do that appraisal? Or
Yes.
or the
Once
land use
that-
director?
Once that goes to vote at that public hearing that we have to hold.
Okay.
Okay. Next item is a review. Thank you. Next item is a review of the November 28th special town meeting warrant articles.
It's on there too.
So you'll see two documents. One's without commentary, and one has commentary about a description of each of the articles. I ask you to pull up the
Okay.
one with the description.
The very last
It's
one.
the most updated version. So what is the board's pleasure? Do you want to go through each article?
I think we ought to take the time to take a first pass, and some may need further work, but I think we should try that.
So the first article is to utilize any excess levy capacity due to, we anticipate the new growth figure to be higher than the estimate that was used at annual town meeting. And this is an article that we've had in past special town meetings. And we should be receiving that certification from DOR within the near future. And I want to make a note that any monetary articles where we're raising and appropriating funds at a special town meeting, they require 2/3 vote. So that's why there's the notation for a 2/3 vote.
So the note says the figure can be provided once we receive certification of our new growth. Are we going to receive that before the town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So we can't act on this yet because we don't know what those appropriations are?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Article 2 and 3. Article 2 is for the firefighters union agreement, once that is completed, which is expected to be finalized before the special town meeting. So that would be to fund the first year of that agreement. That's also a 2/3 vote. Article 3 is for the clerical union, which we expect to have finalized before the special town meeting as well. And it would fund the first year of the clerical union agreement. And that's a 2/3 vote. Article 4 is for, I'll read it, is to vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of money to fund architectural and engineering services for the conceptual design and construction cost estimates for the construction of municipal offices at the TC Passios building. This is an article that we discussed at the town facilities workshop and would be one of the next steps as far as the design process.
Now, are you going to put a dollar amount in there?
Yes. Will
Okay,
be
so
in
we
the
don't have
motion.
that yet?
No,
Okay.
but it would require 2/3 vote as well. Article 5 is to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds a sum of money in the amount of $25,000 to supplement the amount voted under Article 7 at the 2017 annual town meeting on May 6, 2017, under the capital planning report, which provided $12,000 to be used for the playground project at Wallace Park. This was a citizen's petition, and this is money in excess of the money that was voted at the annual town meeting.
And do we have a funding source, or?
There's no funding source identified, and that would have to be identified by the petitioner.
That would have to be identified by the petitioner?
Did we spend the $12,000 that was already appropriated?
That has not been expended yet. Will be though. The work has started at Wallace Park, so I don't have a figure of what's been
So,
spent on that.
are they looking for 25 on top of the 12?
Correct,
So they're looking for a total of 37,000?
correct. But the vote at this special town meeting would be for 25,000.
Okay, but they would have to,
The 12,000.
during the article, they would have to identify a funding source, correct? When they make the motion?
Correct.
Okay. And are they aware of that?
I've not had a conversation with them. They dropped off the certification to Elaine, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question about the available funds for that meeting?
Sure.
I think there's a clear answer to it. I'm trying to clarify what monies can be reallocated. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I understand, and you've mentioned it just briefly here in the last few minutes, that new growth, once it's certified, will be available for reappropriation at special town meeting, at least a portion of that. I'm wondering about the $800,000 in free cash that's already been certified. Is that available for use at special town meeting in November?
It would be technically available, but that money typically is appropriated at annual town meeting, and it would go towards funding the capital plan for fiscal 19 and other sources.
But technically, it's available.
Yes.
As is every budget in town. If you wanted to unfund the police department to fund something, you could do that. We don't do that because you come through the process, but
I understand that, but free cash is in effect leftover money from the previous fiscal year, so it's not going to affect any department's budget or anything like that if it is used, no matter where it's used.
I would question your definition of free cash, but I would reiterate what Mr. Eversole just said. All appropriated monies and budgets are up for discussion, but free cash isn't really leftover money.
the Finance Committee has left on the issue of the going to free cash, which we've had 60 years worth of free cash raids,
Correct.
which then affects the following year's finances.
Right, which is specifically the capital
So when we
plan.
talk about not affecting this year's budget, that may be correct, but could affect next year's
Absolutely.
budget for any of the different departments. So it's technically available to answer your question. How it affects things is a different discussion that we need to have a discussion on.
Okay, thank you.
Just a caveat to that, part of the free cash from last year was used to fund OPEB.
Right.
And stabilization fund.
And special stabilization. Article 6 is to create a technology revolving fund. This is related to the e-permitting software that will have an effect later this year, this fiscal year. And this would be imposing a fee on permits that are using that software, or actually the offices that are issuing permits and licenses through that software. And that would be deposited into that fund to be used for payment of software fees, software upgrades, and equipment related to the electronic permitting.
And these are fees that will be paid for by applicants for permits, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Article 7 is to establish a revolving fund for the deposit of proceeds from rental and lease of the artificial turf field. This is a revolving fund under Chapter 40, Section 3, which is slightly different than 44, Section 53E and a half. And that it allows funds from property and buildings to be deposited into a fund for the upkeep and maintenance. If this wasn't established, these funds would go into the general fund.
So are we not taking any action? Are we just running through these, or do we want to take action on any of these?
So far, I'm not ready to take any action other than Article 6, because that's pretty simple, but I want to find out what the Finance Committee thinks about 7, because if we've had money in the past and now we're not doing it, the fact is you do a revolving fund, so you have to appropriate it, but the theory usually is that it's an available fund and you appropriate it towards, you appropriate funds to cover the cost, but I'd like to have the Finance Committee weigh in on that.
Okay, I don't have a problem holding off. I just would like to voice my support for Article 7. The maintenance of the turf field has been an issue for many years, and implementing a fee and making sure that the fees paid for use of the turf field go back into the turf field, to me, makes perfect sense, and I feel strongly that this is something that we need to do, and actually something I'm trying to understand. You guys have heard me mention before about the fees and wanting to have this discussion, but I think it's important that we start building a fund, because the life of the turf field is about 12 years, which is the length of the note that we have on the turf field. And I think we need to start building up that fund due to the high ticket price associated with replacing that turf. So I feel strongly that this is something we need to establish.
Well, and right, this one's saying into the fund to pay for the bond, so this is not creating a reserve for the future.
Right, and that was my point. I was just going to say, that's what we did last time, is paid the bond, and then we stopped collecting the fee, and I'm not sure that's what I want
Right.
as the process. If we can help, if we can do it without raising the fees inordinately. I thought the plan was to pay the bond and to begin to build a surplus, so we didn't need to
That's what I
borrow
thought
next.
it was, too.
So we didn't need to borrow next time.
Right,
Right,
exactly,
right.
and that's what I thought it was too.
And I would also want to know who's in charge of this fund and makes the determination of is it just payment of the bond, so therefore there's no discretion, or is there anything else? So,
Okay.
questions to be answered.
Article 8 is to establish a revolving fund for the deposit of proceeds from the rental and lease of the TC Passios building and the Brooks House. And this is new under the Municipal Modernization Act that went into effect November of 2016, in that it allows cities and towns to create revolving funds under Chapter 40, Section 3 from proceeds of rental of non-school properties, and authorize expenditures without appropriation for upkeep of such properties. Any questions on that one? Okay. Right now, there's no mechanism for the proceeds that we receive to be put into a fund to continue to pay that. And if there is this mechanism, the next article as well will allow that to be built up. So if there is an unexpected expenditure at, say, the TC Passios, like the boiler or something, and we had a surplus in 1 year, that we could use it towards that. Article 9 is to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 3, namely the proviso that any balance remaining in a revolving fund established for the rental or lease of a municipal building or property at the end of a fiscal year shall not be paid into the general fund, but shall remain in the account and may be expended for the upkeep and maintenance of said facility.
So that's upkeep and maintenance of facility, whereas the other one for the turf is for the bond.
But this references the artificial turf in the notes.
Yes.
It actually says
Because it covers
for upkeep
everything.
and maintenance of said facility, so it talks about the artificial turf in TC Passios and Brooks House.
Yes.
So maybe that answers my question, it's just done in a different way.
Well, if you go back to 7, revolving fund to deposit proceeds from the rental, it doesn't say what it's going to be used for. The description does, but the revolving fund language in the article doesn't. So that
Yeah, so we
needs
need
to
to
be clear. Is it paying for the
clarify
bond? Is it
that.
paying for maintenance? Is it?
Or maybe both.
Right.
I believe it would just be payment of the bond. I think working out for the payment of maintenance needs to be identified in discussions between the Parks Commission and the school committee, where that lies, because right now, there's nothing appropriated in the town budget
For maintenance.
for the turf field, for the maintenance
I
of
think
the turf field.
we voted that a certain amount from the school budget and a certain amount from the town was going to pay the bond, but we hadn't gotten to the point of doing the maintenance.
Correct, that has been identified. The school has committed 40,000 to be towards the payment of the bond. Additional 7,500 from another organization, Lifesta.
And so where does the rental and lease of the artificial turf money go now? Not what is the article, the money that people pay for the renting it now, where does it go?
Those, well, it hasn't been received, it will be, this year will be the first year.
And
The
no,
bond is.
no,
coming.
No, we
No,
pay,
not-
people pay to use the turf field right now.
Where do those payments go?
Beyond the money the school committed, the 40,000 and the 7,500.
No, not to pay the bond, to use the facility. People are currently renting, when a group comes in and says, we want to use the field, and I know that's happened this year, where does that money go, is what Bob's asking.
Last year, there was 2,100 in the balance of an account. That's the extent of I know.
In the park or the school?
That was parks.
Okay.
Okay.
But is it a park account, or is it an account for the parks with the town accountant?
That was, I can't answer
Okay.
that. There was an
So we have to
athletic
identify that.
Right, so
revolving account.
cle-
The
cle-
school is under the school's control.
Okay.
And-
Clearly, we need to have more discussion.
Yes.
You know,
I
at
think we got a
the,
little more.
I mean, I support the concept of what we're trying to do here, but because there's so many
And there are a lot of unknowns.
I mean, at the meeting we had with the boards, it sounded like people don't know who owns the turf
Well,
field.
that is, it's funny, because after that workshop, I did have some follow-up discussions with Karen Menard, as well as Karen Brochu, as well as the town manager, because I'm trying to understand the comments that were made at the workshop. So I do think we need to get to the bottom of that,
Yeah.
and where this money is going to
And
go.
I think that's going to be scheduled.
And that's, later on in the agenda, we'll discuss the possible meeting.
So our questions don't mean that we're not supporting you, it's just we've got questions.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
I'm trying to understand it all myself.
Yeah, right. Pretty big question mark
Yes.
there.
Uh-huh.
So, where are we? Article 10 is the citizens petition to vote to place a moratorium of no less than 10 years on the sale of the land and/or building situated thereon known as the Ritter, the old primary school, the town hall, the Brooks House, and the T.C. Passio School.
I do have a question on this. My question is, and there's a note to this effect, and I'm hoping this came from town council, but to make a requirement that town meeting for 10 years cannot make any other decision does not seem to be within the guidelines of town meeting vote, and I'm reading that this is a non-bounding vote because you can't do that.
Correct.
So is that accurate?
Correct. So a vote such like this one, next year at the town meeting,
They could
someone
undo it.
put an article in for the opposite, and so that's meaning that this is non-binding.
Okay.
So doesn't hold the town to 10 years. That wouldn't.
It may be an expression.
It's more of an
expression of-
express.
It's an expression,
intent,
it's an
yeah.
expression, but it's not
The will
binding.
of the voters.
Okay.
And it does have to identify a funding source.
No, that.
There's
this is
no
just a
funding.
moratorium.
Just
This
a
is not to do
moratorium.
anything, this is just to say, don't sell anything,
But there is a cost associated with that.
You're right,
Right.
yeah, right.
not with this article.
No, but if you have a
This
more,
article does not require an appropriation, so therefore you do not have to identify a funding source. The maintenance of the buildings for the 10 years is something different, but that's not the subject of this article.
Okay.
Article 11, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter a lease agreement with a telecommunications company for the lease of space at the town hall for a term of 10 years with 3 5-year extensions on such terms and conditions as the selectmen deem in the best interest of the town. And to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take all actions necessary to administer and implement such agreement.
Is there an agreement that's substantially different than the one that we originally have? Does this just deal with the length of it, or is this a total rework of the whole agreement?
I am assuming will be a complete rework since
Okay.
the last one was in 2000. So
All right.
just by looking at the what was signed back in 2000 is very rudimentary.
Mhm.
But town council has standard templates for lease agreements. They've done plenty of them in other towns, and worked with T-Mobile as well. So this will require us to go out to bid after the process, to go through procurement law. Article 12 is to amend Article 15 of the town's bylaw entitled Salary Administration Plan. And this would add the positions of beach director, lifeguard, and local inspector to the salary administration plan as required under the salary administration bylaw. And these have been voted on by the Personnel Committee. This is just the next step in the process. It's a requirement.
Just curiosity, local inspector of what?
It's local building inspector. That's-
Okay.
Article 13, to see if the town will vote to accept MGL Chapter 90, Section 17C, to establish, authorizing the establishment of a speed limit of 25 miles per hour on any roadway inside a thickly settled or business district that is not a state highway. So this article is a new, under the Municipal Modernization Act, to allow for this to be voted by the Board of Selectmen as road commissioners, and then it would be, notification would be sent to Mass DOT. Article 14 is to vote to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 18B, authorizing the establishment of designated safety zones with a speed limit of 20 miles per hour on, at, or near any way which is not a state highway and/or with the approval of the Division of Highways, a state highway. This is recommended by the police chief, and this statute gives the town more latitude with respect to setting the speed below 30 miles per hour in certain areas, including congested neighborhoods with a large number of children, or to declare safety zones near daycare centers, playgrounds, or schools, without doing a lengthy study, which has been required in the past. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 20A and a half, authorizing designation of a parking clerk to perform the duties specified in said statute. This is recommended by the police chief as part of the review of the traffic rules and orders that was done recently. And this will be more in line with what the town has established for fines. The current section of law that is accepted by the town is Chapter 90, Section 20A, and that statute only authorizes the town to set the fine for parking violations, with the exception of bus stops, at $25.
So will this require a new hire?
No.
I think we currently have a parking clerk within the
Yes.
the police department. It would just be a different authorization.
Okay, thank you.
Article 16, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Lunenburg Public Schools to enter a lease agreement for up to 5 years for the purchase of a perpetual license agreement with Footsteps to Brilliance for an early learning mobile technology platform. And this is required under Chapter 30B because the lease agreement is in excess of 3 years.
So it's a perpetual license for 5 years?
Article 17 is a pilot agreement with NewGen, 265 Pleasant Street. And this is for a 1 megawatt solar array, and the town would receive approximately $18,000 for 25 years. This array was built under the SREC 1 program, and personal property values for solar equipment at that time were higher than today's values. And that's why this tax agreement will pay a greater amount to the tax per megawatt than the one the town, the board just reviewed tonight and approved. Any questions? Article 18 is to, and I'll ask Adam to step at this point, Land Use Director, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw by deleting Chapter 250, Section 6.7, Stormwater Management, and 6.8.
So this is what we talked about earlier, you know, the 6.7 and 6.8 are in the zoning bylaw, and they don't speak specifically to use or district or anything that relates to zoning. They're something that's applicable town-wide, more analogous to an earth removal bylaw. It's if you do this is the process you need to follow in order to garner this permit. So it's more beneficial as a general bylaw, and that's where I would say probably 90% of communities have stormwater bylaws.
Okay, so these two articles, Article 18 and 19, don't change the wording of our
They
current
don't.
bylaw?
They
It's just moving it
pick it
from
up
one
from
place
one,
to another?
put it down in the
Okay,
other.
Okay.
And like I said, in the future, I think that there's some benefit to altering them, but I think that those alterations should be based on what the forthcoming final language of the permit will be, and it doesn't make sense to mess around with them now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You okay? Okay,
Thanks, Adam.
thank you. All right, so that's it, right, on the warrant?
Yes.
All right. So we will meet again on the 23rd. The warrant doesn't actually close till the 25th. So we'll,
When do you need to go to printer?
The 26th. Morning of the 26th.
Of this month?
all right, so,
And Finance Committee's not having their hearing till the 1st, correct?
You'll-
November 9th.
So
Okay,
basically,
so they
all
won't,
the
you won't have their
all the
recommendations.
recommendations
Are
will
gonna be at town meeting.
At town meeting.
So that's,
Okay.
we usually add that on here, so.
Okay.
So if the
Yeah.
board wants to do the same thing, they can discuss it, you know, you can discuss it at the next two meetings, potentially, if you want to make recommendations. It's your,
I think we're gonna need to have further discussion, and I think we need the numbers. So personally, I don't think we're gonna be ready to make recommendations for next week. I don't know what you guys think, but I think we're gonna have to wait.
We could do, because I think we have questions on the revolving funds.
Why don't we make the decision at the end of at next week's meeting? Whether, I think the question really becomes, do we want to make recommendations on a couple and leave the others?
we should
Or do
just-
we
I
just
think we
do it
should just
across
leave
the
them
board?
all.
I think we
right?
should just leave them all.
I think we
Right.
should
Because the
just
ones
leave
we're
them all.
doing are pretty simple, so.
Right,
that would make
problem.
printing easier.
exactly.
I don't have to
Exactly.
practice.
Karen Brochu will be present at Monday's meeting for her quarterly report, so she will be able to answer your questions on the revolving funds.
Okay, great.
She can answer the questions on the revolving fund. She can't answer the questions about the
And she can probably better answer the questions on the
Yeah.
school funds.
outside stuff, yeah.
Okay. Last item of current business is the MSBA closeout approval final payment requisition.
That item will be tabled to a future meeting.
Okay.
So we're not quite done.
We don't have any minutes. Do we have any warrants?
We do have a warrant for the special election.
Okay, there's a warrant here for a special election on Tuesday, the 7th of November. And this is the election for state senator.
Replacing Jen Flanagan.
Right. So we all have to sign this, and there's several places. So why don't we do that. That's your, just don't leave without signing it. I have a accounts payable warrant in the amount of $274,392.77. A payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $160,052.90. And another payroll warrant in the amount of $755,675.35.
So an interesting note, going through the charter review, when we didn't exactly look at it, there's one town, at least one town that authorizes the town manager to sign the warrants.
It's at least worth a discussion,
So
right?
we will be
Yeah.
coming to you to ask the question of whether that's something you think is a good thing or not.
Great. Any action file issues?
I have one. I haven't seen any indication of the moratorium on road openings on the website or anywhere, and I suggest that we put an informational flyer for inclusion in the next tax bill. It would need to be at the tax collector's office on 12/12. I had a discussion with the treasurer, and it would be about $240 to have an 8x11 sheet put in there. I mean, I don't see that we've done anything to notify people of the road opening moratorium. And I think it's past time that we do something. And this is $250, we've done something in the tax bill. People open their tax bills.
I think we have an obligation to get the word out there that we have the moratorium, and I'm not opposed to doing that. If it's truly just $250, I don't, that's based on.
She said there's, based on the number of, there's 4,856 properties. It would be a nickel for an 8x11 page. It's 2 cents for a third of a sheet, one side, but I don't think you could get it on a third of a sheet. But I think you could probably get it on one 8x11.
Well, you know, one interesting thing to think about is that if we're gonna put a piece of paper in there, maybe we have the moratorium, but the road opening fees on one side and something about stormwater and what people can do to alleviate stormwater issues on the other side.
Yeah, but that doubles the price.
Why does it double the price?
I asked the treasurer, and she said it does.
The only question I have about this, and I like the concept of outreach, is that you're sending to every person in town, some who already had streets done, they've already been paved, and I think a targeted approach, I agree that we need to get this on our website, we need to get this, we need to get the fee that we haven't adopted yet, because that was a still to-do thing. I think $250 is not very much money, but I think you're gonna generate more questions than you're going to solve because the paving season is over. And if we haven't notified them, the ones that have water or sewer in their street that could have to be dug up, then we've got a problem. But I know that the pavement usually has been notified. So I guess I just think it's overkill for what we're trying to do. I think we need to have more targeted approach.
Yeah, I believe in targeted outreach, and I certainly am looking for ways to make sure that we do that. But I just personally, I open the envelope and throw just about everything out. In fact, everything out except the bill. When you get one from Comcast or Unitil or somebody else's, they always have flyers in there, and
But at least we've made an attempt to notify people, so when we get someone who comes forward and says, I wasn't aware of this, we have a comeback to say, well, we sent it to your house in your tax bill.
If that's what we're trying to do, I have no objection.
We've been talking about this since those gentlemen came from Lancaster Ave. How long ago was that? And we have done nothing besides mention it at these meetings. Nothing. I'm just trying to do something. It's not even on the website yet. When I went to that Selectmen's Meeting the other day, it's going to blow your mind when I give you the report on what Framingham's doing. Many towns, you can sign up for an email listing. You can ask, I want to know everything, every report from the police department. I want to know everything that's going on in town. I want to know what's going on with the DPW. Some of them are so specific, you can target what you want to know. You just sign up and you get emails. I mean, we just do so little outreach. I mean, we complain about people not being involved, but I believe that we're part of the problem. I don't think we do enough. And I was just trying to think of something. And especially with the road openings, I think that's a big deal. I would be pretty aggravated if 6 months after my road was paved, I wanted to do something and we said, oh, geez, sorry. You can't do it for 5 years. I just don't think it's fair.
But we already said that we required the town DPW director to notify the people on the street before they pave as part of this process.
I haven't seen any evidence that anything's been done.
I would suggest that we turn this over to the town manager to report back to us on this.
Okay, so the December 12th is the drop dead date where she needs to have something, if we're going to put it in the tax bill.
So we have time to talk about it again.
Okay. And I, again, would like to, I don't think letting people know about the moratorium is necessarily going to take the entire page.
Yeah, right.
So maybe we want to think about doing something like stormwater.
Yeah, I would love that. Got my vote.
Any other action files, issues? Okay. Committee reports. Ms. Luck?
Yes. The school committee met on October 4th. I was unable to attend, but I did note that the school appointed a new business manager, HR director, Michael James Cassidy. There was an executive session dealing with discussing strategy in preparation for negotiations with the Lunenburg Custodial Union. I really do feel that the town and the finance committee needs to be involved in those negotiations. The school committee meets again on October 18th. The Stormwater Task Force met on October 12th. The town manager has signed the proposals submitted by design consultants and will forward the same as soon as possible. And it'll use the community compact grant of $25,000 plus $10,000 from stormwater funds in the budget. DCI will attend the Stormwater Task Force meeting on December 7th to report on the status of the work. We reached out to Brian Doherty of MRPC. He's working to set up a meeting to demonstrate the data collection and cataloging. They're going to reach out to other communities to see if more people are interested, and so I'm not sure when that meeting will happen, but he's working on it. DPW Director Roddickman's reported on the status of stormwater mitigation work currently being achieved on the roadways being paved as part of the debt exclusion. Berms and other improvements that can be incorporated during the paving are being done so. Off-road work, which will not directly impact the paved surfaces, will be completed post-paving. Our next meeting is November 9th. As I mentioned, I attended the fall conference for selectmen sponsored by the Mass Municipal Association. There were about 50 selectmen from area towns in attendance. I was in the discussions with the town of Medfield. I learned that their population of 12,000 with 8,200 registered voters, they have a 14 square mile area. It's an urban setting. Their town meeting quorum is 250, and it doubles usually at town meetings. They thought about going to 100 a few years ago, but they felt that a special interest group could come in and get anything that they wanted passed. Just wasn't enough people. And they were able to get that quorum, double the quorum. And I've reached out to them to see what they're doing to promote that civic engagement, and a couple of them have already gotten back to me, so we can talk about that later. In the session on using technology to enhance civic engagement, the Public Information Officer and Webmaster of Framingham detailed the 21 avenues that town utilizes, from 9 interactive Facebook pages to 1 Hootsuite, whatever that is. To make this possible, they spend about $5K plus her salary plus time that every town department spends to keep this going. It sounded unbelievably overwhelming to me. She recommended that if a town did choose to have a Facebook page, they start out at making it information only, and that you got to post at least two posts a day to keep it in the right place, and that it's got to be visual because people don't look at text. And she said if you move to making it interactive, you have to have a disclaimer in the heading about content, and you have to have somebody monitoring it that takes down inappropriate content. So, it's certainly food for thought. It was an informative way to spend a Saturday. That's it for me.
Ms. Berger?
Conservation Commission met on October 4th. A couple highlights. They had a number of hearings that they approved for various projects within the buffer zones, but I just want to hit a couple highlights. Hickory Hills did come in and do a similar presentation to what you guys saw tonight, and they did do a site walk this past Saturday on the dam, and it will be on their agenda once the notice of intent is filed. There was a hearing scheduled for 48 Oak Ridge Road. Apparently some work was done there within the wetland that was done without a permit. Unfortunately, the property owner didn't attend, so they will be doing an administrative hearing on that one. The Settlers Solar, which is the solar field at 994 Northfield Road, apparently concerns from DEP has some concerns about the project. One is relative to the cold water fisheries within close proximity. Second is that the meadow mix that they're proposing is insufficient. Apparently they're talking about making that a meadow habitat. And there's some drainage conditions, so the applicant is still working to address those concerns.
That's the state, that's DEP, the state, right? Yeah,
Right,
okay.
Department of Environmental Protection, although conservation shares those concerns. Apparently, the property owner is considering a possible conservation restriction on the remainder of the land. So that may happen on the remainder of the land.
Beyond Chapter 61?
Yes, yes. Not definitively, but they're considering it. The forest cutting plan for the small town forest has been approved by the state forester. They're gathering the final plans, and they intend to go out to bid on that project and intend to start work in November through January. It's a winter cutting plan, so the work will be done November through January. And then there is a violation that's being investigated by Department of Environmental Protection for the North Leominster Rod and Gun Club. Conservation had received a complaint regarding the shooting of lead shot into the wetlands, and that complaint was also forwarded to DEP, and so apparently DEP is investigating that concern. MPO. MPO is meeting tomorrow. Unfortunately, I've had something come up that I won't be able to attend. However, I did reach out to the alternate, Gary Luca of Air. He's a selectman in Air. He's the alternate for Subregion 3, and he will be attending to represent Subregion 3. Cable Advisory did meet, and we're continuing to work to come up with a resolution to the Comcast licensing issue. I don't want to disclose the specific details, but we did come up with a counter offer. I don't know if it's been made because we were waiting for some additional information from the town manager. But we're attempting to try to continue to work through the issues with Comcast, and we'll be reporting back to you in the near future.
No reports.
And I have no reports. Town manager reports?
As a follow-up to a question about how owners of the liquor license establishments were notified at the October 3rd hearings, it was confirmed they were notified by certified mail, and letters to Elena's, Hadwin's, and Bad Larry's were hand-delivered by Elaine, and she received written signed receipt by those owners of those letters. Elaine mailed all the license violation letters last week by certified mail, and all but Elena's has received the letter today. And all the letters were also sent to ABCC. The DLTA Business Town Partnership Grant, Chairman Toll already announced about the November 6th meeting, but I just wanted to follow up based on the workshop schedule and what came out of the October 2nd meeting. After posting the notes from that meeting, our IT director, Steve Malandrinos, contacted me and put together a Google form so businesses could log in online, submit their information so we could start to create a directory on our website. So that's, I want to thank him for doing that and getting the ball rolling. So that workshop is Monday, November 6th at 7 p.m. in this meeting room, and it's for residents to come voice their ideas about business community in Lunenburg and what types of business they would like to see. The next scheduled business workshop will be Monday, November 13th at 9:30 a.m. in this meeting room.
So I would ask if it's possible to, I know Greg Bittner posted a link to the workshop for November 6th. There's a flyer, but you have to click on the link to follow it, and I tried to just get a image of it so you could post just the image, because when people have to go through a link to try to find the information, it just makes it less likely that they're going to look at it because people want to see the visual. Is it possible to get that in a image file so that it can be posted directly to the Discussing Lunenburg page?
I could send it to them. It is on our website, the color flyer now. So
yeah, I just think that it's, if we get it out in as many as we
We should be able to open
can.
that and copy it and then post it. So maybe Greg, by watching this, we'll be posting it by the time we get home tonight.
Okay, okay.
An update on Neshoba Valley.
No, I just want to say, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I tried to do that. I followed the link, and the link brings you to our page, which is to the PDF, but you can't save it as an image. I did try to do that, because I tried to do it. So if we could get it in an image file, then I could post it to the, I just want to get it out there in as many as we can, and let's face it, a lot of people don't go to our webpage, so if we can put it out there and just say, this is the meeting, and without any comment, but just post the flyer, I think that would be beneficial. So if I could get it in an image file, I'd be happy to do that, rather than a PDF. The other option is I can scan it and save it as an image, but I'd rather not have to if you can just save it as an image.
All right, I'll put that on my list to do. Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District update. 2 other administration board members and myself completed the negotiations with the new executive director for the dispatch center. Mr. Ross Klun began yesterday, and he brings 23 years of experience working at a senior level position at Barnstable County Sheriff's Office. The administration board and the staff of the center are excited to have him on board. The CPR training for town employees, the Lunenburg Fire Department held the first of 2 CPR trainings for town employees on October 12th. There were representatives from each of the town buildings that received the training, including Town Hall, Senior Center, Ritter Building, TC Passios, and the DPW, as well as some select board members. And I want to thank Chief Sullivan, EMS coordinator Karen Weller, and John Pozark, who is a dispatch supervisor who assisted with the training.
You know, we were talking about defibrillators, and we're trying to check on if there was one in each town building, and they thought there was not one at the Ritter. Were you able to follow up on that?
I haven't since Thursday, no.
Sounds like something you should have.
Absolutely.
Okay, town council office hours. The town council held office hours yesterday, and he has office hours again this month on Monday, October 30th from 2 to 6 p.m.
And I don't know if you meant to, but you skipped over Green Communities.
No, sorry. Green Communities Task Force. The task force met on October 4th, and they're looking for potential energy efficiency projects. I've emailed the appropriate departments to seek input on potential projects at their respective buildings. They were asked to have potential projects submitted by November 1st, as the Green Communities Task Force will be meeting on November 8th to discuss the next steps in applying for the competitive round of Green Communities funding. Also at this next meeting, MRPC consultants will be present to discuss how they will be assisting with grant administration services through the DOER technical assistance grant that the town was a recipient of. Town Hall Painting Project. The bids for the Town Hall Painting Project were due on Wednesday, October 11th, and we received 3 bids. The low bid was from Fox Painting in the amount of $60,000. The next lowest bid was from Demetrios Contracting in the amount of $64,000, and the third bid was from Damasio Contractor in the amount of $95,000. Fox Painting will be awarded the project based on being the lowest responsible and eligible bidder. I have contacted Fox Painting and will update the board as to the schedule of work once I speak with the owner. And I was pleasantly surprised at the prices. Marshall Park. The DPW director, the police chief, and I met last week to discuss the next steps for Marshall Park. We agreed that the last engineered plan for parking does not address the limitations of that property, including potential impact to the wetlands on the property. The DPW director will be requesting the engineer revisit the site and provide an alternative to parking that would include additional parking, keeping the limitations of the property in mind. Once this is complete, we will present the plan to the Parks Commission, work with the property owners in that neighborhood, and update the board on the plan to address the overflow parking that occurs on Chestnut Street. 842 Chase Road. I received a forwarded email from the Conservation Commission about a request by the owner of the property at 842 Chase Road. The owner is interested in donating the land, and the property abuts the large town forest and the Lane property. I am working with Conservation Open Space member Brandon Kibbe and Town Council to identify all the necessary steps and town meeting action that would need to occur. This item could be placed on the special town meeting warrant now that it has been reopened.
Can we do that? I would
Yes.
If we could put that on the warrant.
Yes, it would. I'm working with town council, like I said. He's going to be drafting a proposed article or articles because it would require, one, acceptance of the donation of land, and also there are back taxes on the property, so it would be abatement of those back taxes.
Okay, and how big is the parcel? Do you know offhand?
I do not know offhand.
Okay.
I have a map in my office.
Okay.
of Some announcements. The municipal aggregation electricity rates. The new rates for residents that are municipal aggregation customers with Constellation New Energy, which was formerly Con Edison Solutions and was acquired by Constellation last year, will be 10.465 cents per kilowatt hour, starting on their November meter read date. Our municipal aggregation consultant, Colonial Power, procured this rate from Constellation after going out for competitive bids. This rate is approximately 0.00804 cents higher than last year, and this is an increase largely based on the increase in the capacity charge that is part of the supplier charge. And the supplier charge is made up of actual generation costs of electricity, capacity charge, transmission charge, and other smaller charges. The capacity charge is affected by a decrease in overall electricity generated for this region due to planned electricity generation plant closures, and that will in turn mean a shortfall in meeting peak electricity demand. As of December 1st, 2017, Unitil's electric service fixed residential rates will rise to 12.4002 cents per kilowatt hour. So this would be a savings for customers that typically use Unitil. So residents can opt in or opt out at any point, and we will post a public notice, which you have in your, attached to the report tonight, that can go on the town website with the new rates under the program, and also provides the appropriate contact information if they want to opt in or opt out.
I thought it was automatic that everybody was in unless they wanted to opt out.
Correct, but they couldn't, if they're not currently
They
in,
can come
they
back in.
can opt
Okay,
in.
all right, so that's still,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Another announcement, we received notification from MCO Housing Services about affordable housing rental units at Whalum Luxury Apartments, and this is on the town website as well. There are 30 affordable units with 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that interested persons can submit an application to participate in this housing lottery. And the information, if they would like to see it, is on the website, like I said, or they can contact MCO Housing Services. And the email address for that is lotteryinfo@mcohousingservices.com.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. We have an appointment to the Conservation Commission, filling one vacancy. There's a talent bank form in your package for Katie Child of Kimball Street, and a memo from the Conservation Commission unanimously recommending Ms. Childs for that position. Any questions or comments?
Just a comment that this applicant has a degree in environmental conservation and also has served as a commissioner in another town, so I think in the town of Hudson, I think she'll be a valuable asset to the Conservation Commission. And I would make a recommendation to approve the appointment of Katie Childs to the Conservation Commission.
Before we do that, is she here?
She is.
She is. Would you come forward?
We're speaking well of you in your presence.
That's fine.
Great. What we usually do is ask you why you want to be part of the Conservation Commission.
Okay, awesome. Like you said, I was part of Hudson's Conservation Commission for a year before I moved to Lunenburg. So I had to come off, and I just want to continue what I learned about the Wetlands Protection Act. I want to continue that education. I want to learn more about Lunenburg, and I just want to serve the town. You know, it's nice to get involved with local government, so I just want to, help out the town, pretty much.
I also should mention that Miss Child picked up a talent bank form at the town fair at
All right. Good work, Jamie.
Yes, I did.
Way to go.
Well, I want to thank you for coming forward. I think you'll be a valuable asset.
Oh, thank you very much, guys.
And I will second Paula's motion.
Any further discussion?
I have a comment afterwards.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
Congratulations.
I just have a procedural question, because I note that in the Conservation Commission's recommendations that they interviewed other candidates. I would just point out that this is our appointment, and that if there are candidates being interviewed, we should be made aware of who those are, and then we will give due weight to the committee's comment, but we need to know, and our process is that we get
Interview
those
everyone.
informations as well.
And typically, and I would agree, I didn't even pick up on that, but you're right. And I think that if there are other applicants, as we've done in the past with reappointments, we want to talk with everyone that's interested in serving. So I appreciate that the Conservation Commission did that, but this is our appointment, and we should have the list of applicants and potentially interviewed all of them.
Yeah. I totally agree. I do think I got feedback, and I can't swear to this, that the other two candidates, once they realized what a commitment of time was involved, decided to hold off on their application.
I met with Matt Morrow today, and he said that they all were interested in
Okay,
all interviews.
my bad then. Okay, fair enough.
It's important for us to.
No, I agree then, totally. Just talk about our upcoming schedule. As I mentioned when we opened, our next meeting is on Monday, October 23rd, and it will be at the Lunenburg Middle High School in the Collaborative A classroom. We are finalizing our November meetings for the 7th, 14th, and 21st, and we believe we'll have a workshop in there someplace that will deal with infrastructure, predominantly the buildings, and remind you that the special town meeting is on November 28th. Is there any public comment from the public? Please.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I promise to be brief. I'd like to direct my comments actually to the citizens of Lunenburg and be sure that they understand the action that was taken under new business number 1, the first item this evening, and be sure that they are aware that the special town meeting warrant is now, and again, open until the 25th of October, which means that citizens' petitions can be formulated, and the appropriate number, I believe it's 100 signatures gathered, to get an article into special town meeting. You have until the 25th. Just want to make that clear. I'd also like to make one more comment, just to be sure that town manager looked at the paragraph that pertained to the reason this was reopened. And it also states that all agencies, and I'm not sure exactly what that definition is, but all agencies of the town of Lunenburg are to be notified also that the action was taken. Thank you.
The warrant closes the 25th at what time?
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Any other public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board?
I have one comment. Somewhat in response to Phyllis's comment regarding the school committee negotiations. Prior to Prop 2.5 being adopted in 1980, school committee could come to town meeting and ask for any money, and town meeting had to appropriate it. Prop 2.5 provided that the town gets to vote the bottom line, but after we vote the bottom line, the budget and all actions by the school department are their jurisdiction, and that we don't have any authority to be involved in any negotiations or anything else like that, as much as we might want to, but they have complete discretion to spend their money as they deem appropriate.
Wow.
And
That's unfortunate.
I'd also like to point out, while I agree with what Mr. Ebersol just said, I mean, when you say the town ought to be part of those negotiations, the school board is an elected body of the town, and therefore the town is represented, but I would hope that the school board took that responsibility and their fiduciary responsibility in those negotiations seriously.
That would be the hope.
Any other comment? Can I get a motion?
Clarifying that.
Could I get a motion, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. See you next Monday.
So do we just close them up and just leave them?
Yep.